I want to share a story that still feels surreal to me, even as I type it out. My name is Jake, and I'm a husband who's been through hell and back, all thanks to my wife, Emily. We were married for 5 years, and like any couple, we had our ups and downs. At first glance, we were that picture-perfect couple, living in a cozy suburban home, planning for kids and filled with dreams of the future. But like any great illusion, things can change in an instant. Signs of trouble. Oh, they were there, subtle at first. Emily started working late at the office more often, claiming that she was putting in the extra hours to get promoted. I'd watch her get dressed, wearing outfits I hadn't seen before, those tight little dresses that hugged her curves just right. I'd always been supportive, encouraging her to chase her career dreams. But as the weeks dragged on, I found myself feeling an unease that I couldn't quite shake. Friends would tell me I was imagining things, that I was just being paranoid. But the little things, the secretive phone calls, the sudden changes in her routine, told me a different story. Then one night the bombshell dropped. I had come home early from work, excited to surprise her. I walked into our house, and the first thing I noticed was the unmistakable sound of laughter coming from the living room. I figured she had invited a girlfriend over, so I tiptoed around, ready to give her a big hug. Instead, when I walked in, I found Emily on the couch, her head thrown back in laughter as she snuggled up to my twin brother, Matt. I froze. My mind raced. They looked too comfortable, too intimate. I could feel the blood drain from my face as I processed what I was seeing. I cleared my throat to announce my presence, and the laughter stopped abruptly. Emily turned to me, her eyes wide, and I could see the panic bloom on her face. "Jake, you're home early," she exclaimed, her voice too high-pitched. "What's going on here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the edge creeping in. I glanced at Matt, who was suddenly more interested in his shoes than in me. "Is there something you want to tell me?" The look on her face was one I'll never forget. She quickly leapt up from the couch, smoothing her dress as if trying to cover up the evidence of what I had just walked in on. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, the panic in her voice making it clear that it was exactly what it looked like. I didn't even know how to respond. I felt anger bubbling inside me, mixing with betrayal and confusion. The betrayal was not just because of what I saw, but also because Matt was my twin, the one person I thought would never cross that line. Emily launched into a series of excuses, none of which made any sense. "We were just talking about our weekend plans," she insisted. "You know how close we are, it's nothing." But I could see that her tone was defensive. I was torn between wanting to scream and wanting to hear the details. "Just talking, really? You think I'm that stupid?" The rage was pouring out of me, and I could feel my hands clenching into fists at my sides. The confrontation escalated quickly, and the more she tried to convince me, the more I felt the seams of our marriage ripping apart. I could see the guilt written all over her face, and I knew this wasn't just a one-time thing. The laughter that had once filled our home now felt like a haunting echo of the love that had turned into a twisted betrayal. When she finally admitted to the affair, it was like a punch to the gut. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jake. It just happened," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. But her tears felt insincere, and I couldn't help but think of all the nights she had told me she was working late, all the times she'd promised me she was loyal. I stood there, trying to process everything. My heart felt heavy in my chest, and I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that the woman I loved, who I had trusted, had betrayed me so deeply. I felt something inside me break, and in that moment I realized I had a choice to make. Would I confront the truth of this betrayal head-on, or would I let it consume me? The decision loomed over me like an ominous shadow. How do you move forward when your world has been shattered? I needed to make a plan, but I was already deep in the emotional turmoil, feeling the anger and hurt swirling inside me. What happened next would change everything. After that confrontation, I was a whirlwind of emotions. I had never felt so lost, so betrayed. How could Emily, the woman I had promised to love for better or worse, do this to me? And with Matt, my twin brother. It felt like a dark comedy, the kind where you laugh nervously because the absurdity is too much to digest. But this was my life, and there was nothing funny about it. In the days following that explosive confrontation, everything felt like a blur. I went to work trying to focus, but my mind kept replaying that scene. Emily on the couch with Matt, laughter echoing like a nightmare I couldn't escape. My colleagues noticed my distraction, asking if I was okay, but I brushed them off. I didn't want to talk about it. I just needed to put one foot in front of the other. At home, things were tense. Emily would try to engage me in conversation, pretending everything was normal. She'd talk about trivial things, what to have for dinner, plans for the weekend, but I couldn't engage. I felt like a ghost in my own life, drifting through the motions while I plotted my next move. I wasn't ready to confront her again, but I knew the time would come. Then came the tipping point. One evening, I found myself rummaging through the living room looking for something to distract me. I opened a drawer in the side table and stumbled upon a pile of receipts. My heart dropped as I leafed through them, expensive dinners, hotel stays, and one particularly telling receipt for a romantic getaway just a week before I caught them. It felt like salt on an already gaping wound. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I stormed into the kitchen where Emily was preparing dinner. Care to explain these? I thrust the receipts in her face like a dagger. She looked at me, her face draining of color. Jake, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been cheating on me. That you've been sharing intimate moments with my brother while I'm here, thinking everything is fine. My voice was rising, fueled by anger and betrayal. You turned a blind eye to our marriage for a fling. This isn't just a mistake, it's a choice. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out, just a pitiful gasp. I never meant for it to get this far, she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I could keep it separate. I thought what? That I wouldn't find out. I interrupted, my heart pounding. You've been lying to me. You've been lying to both of us. She tried to approach me, reaching out for my arm, but I stepped back, the betrayal still too raw. Don't touch me, you've lost that right. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, and part of me felt a flicker of pity. But more than that, I felt anger bubbling over. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the deception, the lies, and what our relationship had become. A facade built on broken trust. That night, while I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted inside me. I was done being the victim in this situation. I wasn't going to wallow in pain and self-pity. I wanted revenge, not the kind that involved violence or grand gestures, but a calculated plan to ensure that they both felt the weight of their betrayal. I started plotting. I spent hours on my phone researching how to expose them. I found a way to turn their wedding plans. Yes, my twin brother was set to marry his fiancée next month, into a nightmare for them. I knew that their relationship had been built on lies, and now I had the power to pull the rug out from under them. The plan took shape slowly. The first step was to confirm details about the upcoming wedding. I reached out to a few mutual friends, pretending to be excited about the event. The more I learned, the more I felt a sense of purpose. I wasn't just going to sit idly by while they celebrated their supposed love. I thought about how Emily had been flaunting her affair, how she'd talk about how excited she was for Matt's wedding while betraying him. The hypocrisy was infuriating. It was time to turn the tables. I started drafting anonymous messages, carefully constructing a narrative that would expose the truth about Emily's infidelity, complete with evidence. I could already imagine Matt's face when he found out that the woman he thought he loved had been cheating on him with his own brother. The thrill of the plan coursed through me, igniting a fire I hadn't felt in weeks. As I plotted and prepared, I felt a sense of control returning to my life. I was no longer the victim. I was the one holding the power to decide how this story would end. I couldn't wait for the wedding day to arrive. As the wedding day approached, the excitement around me was palpable. Friends and family were buzzing with anticipation for Matt and Emily's big day, completely oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Invitations had been sent, and every little detail was being planned down to the last flower arrangement. For everyone involved, it was a moment of joy, but for me, it was the perfect stage for revenge. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I spent my evenings in a feverish haze of preparation. I crafted messages to several of Matt's closest friends, sharing what I knew about Emily's affair. I made it clear that this was not just a rumor. I had the receipts, both figuratively and literally. I was careful to include the evidence I had gathered, the receipts from their hotel, timestamps of texts she'd sent me while with him, and even some photos of them together at various locations. It was an avalanche of proof designed to shake the very foundation of their relationship. I also made sure to slip some hints to Matt's family members. I wanted to ensure that the truth would reach him before he walked down that aisle. My heart raced with excitement and a sense of vindication. They thought they could pull off this perfect wedding while hiding the ugly truth. Little did they know, I was planning to crash that party in the most unforgettable way. On the day of the wedding, I arrived at the venue hours before anyone else, dressed casually but with a plan burning in my mind. It was a beautiful outdoor setting, adorned with blooming flowers and twinkling lights. I could see the excitement in the air, but all I could think about was the moment I would unleash the truth. As guests began to arrive, I watched from a distance, blending into the crowd. I spotted Matt looking dapper and blissfully unaware, greeting friends with a smile. I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do, but it was quickly drowned out by the anger I had been nurturing since the affair had come to light. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. He deserved to know the truth before he made the biggest mistake of his life. The ceremony began, and I took my position behind a tree, waiting for the perfect moment. Emily looked stunning in her white dress, the picture of innocence. I couldn't help but notice how she radiated joy, a stark contrast to the betrayal she had been hiding. The officiant spoke beautifully, but I couldn't focus on the words. My thoughts were racing, calculating the moment I would step in and shatter their illusion. As they exchanged vows, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew I was about to change everything. Then, just as Emily said, "I do," I made my move. I stepped out from behind the tree and made my way toward the front, my heart pounding in my chest. The moment I was visible, all eyes turned to me, confusion immediately washing over the crowd. "Sorry to interrupt," I called out, my voice steady but loud enough to carry. "But I think there's something you all should know before we continue." Gasps echoed through the crowd, and I could see Matt's face turn from confusion to recognition, his eyes widening in horror. Emily's expression shifted from shock to panic as she tried to regain her composure. "What are you doing here, Jake?" she shouted, her voice trembling and desperate. I ignored her and focused on Matt. "You deserve to know the truth. Emily has been cheating on you with me, your twin brother." I held up the receipts I had printed out and waved them in the air, seeing the realization dawning on his face. One of Matt's friends stepped forward, confusion etched on his features. "What? Are you serious? Jake, this isn't funny." I wasn't joking. I turned to the crowd, my heart racing but my resolve unshakable. "It's not a joke, I have proof." I quickly recounted the timeline of the affair, describing how it started, the lies they had told, and the moments we shared as a family, all while Emily was betraying not just me but also the man she was about to marry. Matt's expression shifted from disbelief to anger, and I could see his fists clenching at his sides. "You're lying," Emily yelled, desperation in her voice. "You're trying to ruin this." "I'm trying to save him, Emily," I shot back, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You owe him the truth. You owe everyone here the truth." The crowd was a mix of shock and outrage, whispers swirling like a tempest. I could hear people demanding explanations, asking what was going on. The officiant stood frozen, his mouth agape in disbelief. Matt took a step toward Emily, searching her eyes for the truth. "Is this true? Have you been lying to me all along?" Emily opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I could see the facade crumbling, and despite the pain it was causing me, there was a sense of satisfaction in seeing her caught in her lies. As Matt stood there, hurt and betrayed, I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. He didn't deserve this. None of us did, but he had the right to make a choice, and I was giving him that chance. Finally, Emily broke down, her tears flowing freely as she stammered out half-hearted apologies. "Matthew, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a mistake." But it was too late. I could see the betrayal etched on Matt's face, the shock and heartbreak mingling into a storm of emotions. He turned away from her, his expression unreadable as he walked back toward the guests, leaving Emily standing alone at the altar, exposed and broken. The aftermath of that moment was chaotic. Friends rushed to comfort Matt while others confronted Emily, demanding answers. I stood there, feeling a mix of emotions, relief, guilt, satisfaction, but mostly I felt a sense of closure. This was the moment I was waiting for. They would have to face the consequences of their actions now. I turned and walked away, leaving the chaos behind me. I had done what needed to be done, and though it hurt to see it unfold, I knew I had reclaimed my power. I had walked away clean, leaving them to face the mess they had created. As I walked away from the chaos of the wedding, I was flooded with mixed emotions. Part of me felt liberated. I had finally taken control of my life after being blindsided by betrayal. I had shattered the illusion of happiness that Emily and Matt had built, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. But that satisfaction was quickly overshadowed by the weight of the situation. The aftermath was a whirlwind. I heard snippets of conversations as I made my way out of the venue, people trying to process what had just happened. Did you see that? I can't believe she was cheating. What a way to ruin a wedding. The comments swirled around me like a storm, but I didn't care. I had done what I needed to do. I had given Matt a chance to make an informed decision about his future, one that didn't involve the woman who had deceived him. I got into my car, the engine purring to life, and I sat there for a moment, staring blankly at the road ahead. I didn't have a plan for what came next. Part of me thought I should go home, but home felt like a hollow shell of what it used to be. I needed space, so I drove aimlessly, letting the hum of the tires on the pavement drown out the chaos in my mind. As I drove, I reflected on everything that had happened. I thought about the years I wasted trusting Emily, the moments we shared that now felt tainted. I thought about the love I once felt, how it had been twisted into a weapon against me. I felt anger bubbling up again, but this time it was directed inward. How could I have been so blind? Eventually, I found myself at a small diner on the outskirts of town, a place I used to visit with friends in high school. I parked and walked in, the smell of coffee and fried food bringing back memories of simpler times. I slid into a booth in the corner, needing a moment to breathe. I ordered a black coffee and a slice of pie, my stomach still in knots, and pulled out my phone. I knew I had to face the fallout, but part of me wanted to avoid the calls and messages that would undoubtedly flood in. I couldn't help but glance at social media, and my heart sank as I saw posts from friends tagging each other at the wedding. The images of a broken celebration haunted me, and I quickly put my phone away. As I waited for my food, I couldn't shake off the feeling of loneliness. I had just exposed a major betrayal, yet here I was, sitting alone in a diner, contemplating the wreckage of my life. I pulled my thoughts together, reminding myself that I did the right thing. It was time to focus on healing and moving forward, even if I didn't know exactly what that looked like. My food arrived and I picked at the pie, forcing myself to eat even though I wasn't particularly hungry. I needed sustenance for the long road ahead. I wasn't ready to go home, not yet. I needed to feel strong to begin to rebuild my life. After finishing my meal, I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As I strolled the quiet streets, I let myself think about the future. What did I want? I could no longer base my happiness on someone else, especially not someone who had betrayed me so deeply. I needed to reclaim my identity, too. Find what made me happy again. Days turned into weeks as life slowly began to normalize. I focused on work, diving into projects and pushing myself to excel. I leaned on friends who rallied around me, offering support and distraction. It felt good to reconnect with people who genuinely cared about me, rather than being wrapped up in the lies I had lived with. Then one evening I received a text from Matt. My heart raced as I read it. "Can we talk?" I hadn't heard from him since the wedding and I wasn't sure what to expect. Part of me worried he wouldn't forgive me for what I had done, while another part of me hoped he had come to terms with what had happened. We arranged to meet at a bar, and as I walked in, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I spotted Matt sitting at the bar, nursing a drink, his face a mask of contemplation. He looked different, haggard and worn, but also determined. "Hey," I said, sliding onto the stool next to him. "Hey," he replied, his voice low. He took a deep breath, clearly gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot since the wedding." I nodded, knowing that there was no point in avoiding the elephant in the room. Yeah, I can imagine. Matt looked at me, his eyes intense. I wanted to thank you for what you did. As hard as it was to hear, I needed to know the truth. I can't believe Emily would do that to me, let alone with you. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I didn't want to hurt you, I just felt you deserved to know. I appreciate that, he said, his voice steadying. I've spent the last few weeks processing everything. It's been tough. It must be, I said softly. I can't imagine how you must feel. He took a moment, staring into his glass before continuing. I've decided to call off the wedding. I can't be with someone who would betray me like that. I thought she was the one, but now I know I was just living in a fairy tale. Hearing him say that was both heart-wrenching and a relief. I admired his strength. It took guts to walk away from what he had envisioned as his future. I'm proud of you, man. It's not easy to make that choice, but you deserve better. He nodded, looking thoughtful. You know, I was angry with you at first. I thought you were just trying to ruin my life. But now I see that you were trying to protect me. For that, I'm grateful. The air between us shifted, the tension easing. It felt surreal to sit with my twin brother and talk about the fallout of our lives, but it also felt like a step toward healing. Where do we go from here? I asked, genuinely curious about what he wanted. Well, I need to take some time for myself, he replied. But I'd like to rebuild our relationship. We've always been close and I want to get back to that. I felt hope flicker inside me. I'd like that too. We can get through this together. As the night wore on, we shared stories and laughter, reminiscing about the past. It felt good to reconnect, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us, a chance to heal from the wounds that had been inflicted upon us. Leaving the bar that night, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I had faced the consequences of my actions, and while they hadn't been easy, they had led me to a place of growth and understanding. I was ready to move forward, ready to make my life my own again. The weeks following that night at the bar felt like a turning point in my life. Matt and I rebuilt our relationship, bonding over shared experiences and the newfound freedom from the chaos that had once consumed us. It was a slow process, but there was something healing about reconnecting with my brother, someone who truly understood the depth of our shared history. Meanwhile, I continued to focus on myself. I spent time with friends who had supported me through the turmoil. I picked up old hobbies that had fallen by the wayside during my marriage, painting, hiking, and even a bit of traveling. I rediscovered pieces of myself that I had long forgotten, and each day felt like a small victory in reclaiming my identity. Despite the healing, I couldn't escape the shadow of Emily entirely. I kept hearing rumors about her and how she was coping with the fallout of our wedding disaster. Friends of mine who saw her out and about mentioned her looking crushed, wandering through life as if she were lost. I felt a twinge of guilt for the pain she was experiencing, but I constantly reminded myself that she had brought this on herself. One evening, as I was getting ready to go out for dinner with Matt, I received a text from Emily. My heart raced as I read it. Can we talk? I know I messed up, but I need to apologize. My initial reaction was anger. Why should I give her the chance to speak? But then I realized that answering the question of why she did what she did might bring closure, not just for her but for me as well. I took a deep breath, contemplating what this conversation might bring. Where do you want to meet? I replied, curiosity edging out my anger. Can we meet at the park? I just need a quiet place to talk. I agreed, and an hour later, I found myself sitting on a bench beneath the soft glow of the setting sun, waiting for her to arrive. The park was serene, a stark contrast to the turbulence we had both been through. I watched as families played and joggers passed by, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. When Emily finally arrived, her demeanor was noticeably different. She looked older, the weight of her actions evident in the lines on her face and the sadness in her eyes. I felt a pang of empathy, but I quickly steeled myself. This wasn't about my feelings, it was about hers. Jake, she said softly as she approached, her voice trembling. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. What did you want to talk about? She took a deep breath, clearly gathering her thoughts. I've been doing a lot of reflecting since everything happened. I know I hurt you and I can't express how sorry I am for my actions. I remained silent, letting her continue. I wanted to hear what she had to say, even if my heart was still reeling from the betrayal. I made terrible decisions out of insecurity and fear. I thought I could find something I was missing in my life outside of our marriage, but I was wrong. Instead of facing my issues, I ran away from them, she admitted, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you or Matt. I was so caught up in my own selfishness that I lost sight of everything. As she spoke, I felt anger and sadness warring within me. You had a choice, Emily. You chose to betray me to manipulate both Matt and me. It was a conscious decision. I know, and I've been living with that guilt every single day, she replied, tears welling in her eyes. I can't believe I threw everything away. I lost my best friend and the love of my life. I miss you, Jake. I miss what we had. Hearing her say that cut deep. I remembered the good times, the love we shared, but I also remembered the pain. You can't just erase what happened with your apologies, Emily. Trust is broken. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand that. I can't expect you to forgive me, but I want to take responsibility for my actions. I wanted to reach out and say I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I hope it can bring some closure for both of us. Closure, I echoed, the word feeling heavy in the air. I need time, Emily. I need to figure out how to move forward without you in my life. She stared at me, the sadness in her eyes palpable. I respect that. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself. I know I have a long way to go, but I want to be better. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging in the air. Finally, I broke the silence. I hope you find what you need, Emily, but I can't be part of that anymore. She nodded, her expression solemn. Thank you for listening to me. I wish you nothing but happiness, Jake. With that, she turned to leave, and as she walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I had faced her, and for the first time I felt a sense of closure settling over me. It wouldn't be easy moving forward, but I knew I was on the right path. As I left the park that evening, I felt lighter. I had faced the ghosts of my past and made peace with what had happened. I could finally focus on my future without the weight of Emily's choices dragging me down. In the weeks that followed, I continued to embrace my new life. I found solace in creative outlets and deepened my relationships with friends and family. Matt and I frequently hung out, sharing laughs and even planning a trip to visit some old friends. It felt good to reconnect with him, to remind ourselves of the bond we had beyond the chaos. And while I knew I still had healing to do, I also recognized the strength I had gained through the experience. I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was taking charge of my life. I felt empowered, ready to embrace whatever came next. But even as I moved forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that life had more lessons in store for me. I was ready to face them head-on. As the months passed, I continued to move forward, embracing the freedom I had fought hard to reclaim. I realized that the experience with Emily and Matt had not only changed my relationships, but had also transformed me in unexpected ways. I was learning to be resilient, to prioritize my needs, and to establish boundaries that would protect my well-being. Life had a funny way of throwing curveballs at you, but I was finally ready to catch them. I took risks that I had been too hesitant to take before. I applied for a new job that excited me, and even signed up for a painting class that had been on my bucket list for years. It felt invigorating to step outside my comfort zone, to embrace the unknown. One Friday evening, I attended an art gallery opening with a friend. It was a bustling event filled with creativity and inspiration. As I wandered through the exhibits, I found myself captivated by a particular piece, a vibrant painting that seemed to capture the essence of rebirth. I stood there, absorbed in the colors and emotions represented, when someone approached me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said beside me. I turned to see a woman with an infectious smile. Her name was Rachel, and we struck up a conversation about art, life, and everything in between. I felt a connection, a spark of interest that surprised me. As we talked and shared stories, I realized how much I had missed the lightness that comes with meeting someone new. We exchanged numbers, and that night I left the gallery feeling hopeful. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I began dating, and it felt exhilarating. She had a kind heart and her laughter was like music. I found myself opening up again, allowing someone into my life. It felt like a breath of fresh air after being suffocated for so long. With Rachel, I felt a sense of peace. We explored the city together, visited coffee shops, and attended concerts. It wasn't just about romance. It was about companionship, a true partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. I felt grateful for every moment we shared, knowing how precious they were. As I navigated this new relationship, I also took the time to reflect on the lessons I had learned from my past. I understood that trust had to be earned, and I was committed to building it, both with Rachel and within myself. I had emerged stronger from the ashes of betrayal, and I was determined to create a life centered around honesty, vulnerability, and love. One evening, while sitting on a bench overlooking the river with Rachel, I began to share my story with her, how I had come to this point in my life, the heartbreak of my past, and the journey to rediscover myself. She listened intently, her expression warm and compassionate. "I'm so sorry you went through that," Rachel said, her voice soft. "But I'm so glad you found the strength to move forward. You deserve to be happy." Her words resonated deeply, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for having someone like her in my life. "Thank you for being understanding," I replied. "It's not always easy to share, but it feels good to let it out." As we sat there, watching the sunset paint the sky in a cascade of orange and pink, I felt a wave of realization wash over me. I was no longer defined by my past. I was forging a new path. I had learned that love could be beautiful and fulfilling, but it could also be fragile. I wouldn't take it for granted again. Eventually, I found the courage to reach out to Matt again. It had been a while since we had hung out, and I wanted to check in on him. We met at our favorite bar, where we reminisced about old times and shared stories about our lives since the wedding incident. I could see the healing in his eyes as he spoke about moving on from Emily and focusing on himself. "I've been seeing someone too," he shared, a hint of a smile on his face. "It's still new, but it feels good. I'm actually excited about where things are heading." "That's great to hear," I replied, genuinely happy for him. "You deserve to be with someone who values you." We both laughed and raised our glasses in a toast to new beginnings. It felt good to know that we were both on this journey together, supporting each other as we rebuilt our lives. As the night wore on, I realized that while the scars from the past would always be there, they didn't have to dictate my future. I had emerged from the darkness into a world filled with possibilities. I was in control of my happiness, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Looking back, I learned that betrayal could lead to unexpected growth. I had faced the storm and come out stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever. Life had tested me, but I had learned to rise above it, to turn pain into power. As I walked home that night, I felt grateful for all the experiences that had shaped me, for the lessons learned, and for the people who had stood by me. I was ready to take on life with an open heart, embracing love, joy, and all the beautiful chaos that came with it. This was my story, a testament to resilience, and I was proud to share it.